Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Time to Man Up podcast. There are a lot of directions we could go in the world right now. But what I want to do is I want to go down the road of transgender athletes. And I want to just talk about that. And we clearly know that in the Word of God, from the very beginning, God created man, and out of man he created woman. He took a rib and caused a sleep to fall on him, took a rib and created woman. And so from the very beginning, God said, I'm going to put man on the earth. I'm going to put woman on the earth. And then the man and the woman, they are going to come together. They are going to become one. And the Bible says what God has joined together, let no man separate. There is a natural relationship between a man and a woman. And I would say that even in created animals, there is a natural relationship of a male and female animal. We're not going to get into all of that and what it is, but we clearly understand that God created male and female, and they were to live together to become one. And we know that the way that they become one is not just emotionally, relationally, but sexually, they become one. And that's because God created it to work that way. But where we kind of want to dive in today is when it comes to transgender athletes. I know that, they just announced the college playoffs, and there are some Florida State fans that are not too happy. And I kind of, as a person with no dog in the fight, my team was eliminated. The reality was, and even Georgia fans are all up in arms. And to the Georgia fans, all I have to say is this to you: beat Alabama. If you beat Alabama, it's not even a conversation. For you that know me, I'm an Ohio State fan. There's one answer for Ohio State fans: beat Michigan, and we haven't done that in 3 years. And so we can't expect to lose that and be able to then get into the bowl unless there are not enough teams to fill that role. For Florida State, it was 12-0, 13-0 because the conference championship. Great season. When I look at Alabama, when I look at Texas and Florida State down to their third string quarterback, and remember, I'm an Ohio State fan. We won the national championship with a third string quarterback, so I know it can be done. But I look at that and I think, having watched Texas this past weekend, having watched Alabama, those are the two best teams when it comes to those two in Florida State. So as I look at that and you say, well, how does that have to do with transgender? Well, one of the stories I want to just talk about is out in California in a high school track meet. There was a transgender, a male participating in female athletics. And we're going to get into all of the unfairness of that because clearly God created men and women different. Listen, in the boardroom, there's equality there with their smarts, with their knowledge. But when it comes to physical competition, they just are not the same. A top male athlete is going to defeat a top female athlete pretty much any day of the week. And we can try to find different things, but I always go back to the fact that women use a softball, men use a baseball. Women's basketballs are smaller. I got confused the other day because I started to watch a girls' basketball game and they still play quarters, men's play halves. I don't even get that difference. I'm sure there's a purpose that I don't understand. But when you begin to then, as long as women are competing in women's sports, those differences are okay because they all have the same standards. For men competing in men's sports, it's all good because they have the same standards. Men will throw the ball further. They will hit the ball farther than a woman. And you know what? That doesn't degrade women because among men, there are the best of the best. And among women, there are the best of the best. But in this track meet, a young girl had, I believe, ran her personal best. She had done a great job and finished fourth. Now, here's the problem. Only the top 3 advanced to the next round of the state track tournament. So the girl in fourth, she's defeated. You can see it in the picture. You can see it in the video. She is just distraught because she knows that she missed out on this. And not only that, the transgender athlete finished second, which means that this girl that finished fourth would have finished third. And then on the podium, because they go first and next to second, third is next to first, second is next to fourth. So not only did she lose out because of this transgender athlete, but now she has to stand by her. And then in the midst of this, there was a video of her waving probably to family, and then she gave a thumbs down. And there were people that wanted to just destroy her because she was anti this transgender athlete. And it could have been just, I'm disappointed I didn't make it to the next round. But who can blame the girl when she finishes fourth that a transgender athlete kept her from going to the next level? Listen, a normal person is going to say that is not fair. Thus why you're going to see this interaction with the college football playoffs, because right now Florida State fans are saying it's not fair. And I'll tell you, I can't argue with that. I can say by my eye test, Texas and Alabama should be in one of the final 4 teams, and Florida State shouldn't be. But they checked all the boxes. They did everything they needed to do, and they lost one less game than Texas and Alabama. And yet they didn't make it. So Florida State fans, I get you. I feel that pain. I'm sorry for you. And someone was going to get left out. And I know we say, well, next year there's going to be 12 teams. And that'll be great because no one will get left out. There will still be a 13th team. And at least at the top, usually we don't have this amount of teams that qualify for it, right? But when you get down to 12 and 13, what's that debate look like? So it's going to be crazy. So when we talk about transgender athletes, we have to understand that God did not create man and woman equal. It doesn't mean that he created woman inferior. Men have certain strengths, especially when it comes physically, and women have certain strengths. Physical is not one of those. Now, again, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. There are really strong women, and I have no doubt that when I watch women in the UFC, they could probably kick my butt. But you won't see a top UFC female fighter get in the ring with a top male fighter because it would not even be fair. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, it says this, "Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way." So we've got this relationship. What is that relationship? Male, female. Husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. And what do they need to understand? They need to show honor because they're different. But honor the woman as the weaker vessel. We don't put down our wives because they're the weaker vessel. We celebrate that. We honor that. Because why? Because they are heirs of the grace of life. And it goes on, it says, so that your prayers may not be hindered. So we have this relationship between a husband and wife, and Peter calls them the weaker vessel. And I know there are some ladies that see that, and that ticks them off. Let me tell you this. When he says the weaker vessel, Peter is just recognizing the truth. When it comes to physicality, the woman is weaker than the man. And that's not a negative thing. I mean, we make it such a negative thing in our culture, and it's not that way. I'll tell you what, when I think about a woman giving birth, I'm like, I could never do that. that takes like supernatural power, right? Supernatural strength. I've heard, I clearly don't know because I'm a guy, but I've heard that the closest we come to giving birth is when we pass a kidney stone. I've passed 3 kidney stones. I was about ready to cry like a baby. I mean, those things are torturous, right? If you want to torture somebody, if you want to get the truth out of them, just give them a kidney stone and tell them the only way they're going to get out of it is to tell the truth, because that is horrible. And again, I've talked to women that can compare it when I can't compare it, and they say that a kidney stone is about as bad as giving birth. And that doesn't mean birth, and it doesn't raise up passing a kidney stone. But all I know is this. I thought I was going to die. I mean, I'm like anguishing over that, right? The pain is horrible. So I can't even imagine giving birth. And so if you're a woman and you're listening to this, man, kudos to you, because women got it going on when it comes to strength to give birth. I mean, that's amazing. But men, God has made us physically stronger. And that is why he gave us the role to defend our families. Listen, if somebody breaks into my home, I'm going at them. I'm going at them, and I will risk everything to protect my family, everything. There was a time once when we were out, and it was during college, and we were at this intersection, and this old lady had run the light, and she T-boned this dude and flipped his car upside down, and we were like one behind, and so we would have been there if it was just a little sooner, and it was just like, wow, what just happened? So I was in the back seat, I wasn't driving, and I just immediately jumped out of the car and I ran up to see what was going on. I don't know if it was just like my nature kicked in, but I ran to the car, and I'm this guy, there's open cans of alcohol. It wasn't his fault for the wreck, but clearly he had been drinking, and clearly he was in shock from the accident. I mean, it was a hit, and we've got gas just flowing through the car. I mean, the car's upside down. Gas is coming into the where the people sit, and he is trying to start it because he doesn't realize he's upside down and he's not going anywhere. I climb into the car through the passenger seat, and I'm trying to yank this guy's hand, and he was stronger than I was, but I'm trying to do everything I can to keep him from starting that car, because all I could think of is from the movies, this car explosion going on. And so I'm in there, and finally somebody came to the driver's side door and was able to reach in and help me get the key out, get his hand. They got his hand off my hand, and so I was able to pull the key out, and we got that. And my friends were like, "Are you stupid? What were you thinking?" And the reality was I wasn't thinking, because it kicked in. Let's do this. And when it comes to my family, that's what happens when it comes to protecting a weaker vessel. And so when I see these female athletes having to compete against men, that's what they are. They're men. Let's not call them transgender. Transgender, guys, is the lie of the enemy. I mean, when I think about how many genders you can be now, it's just ridiculous how many. And when you do certain profiles and they ask you what you are, it's like male, female, period. That's all you can be, male or female. And we try to turn it into a lot of these different things. And so what you will notice is this. Never do you see a female declaring as a male competing in male sports. It wouldn't work. They would not be able to compete with men when it comes to their strength, their speed, their agility. They would not be able to compete with them. And so you'll notice that this river flows one way, right? It flows one way. It is men who are unable to compete with men. In other words, they are average, they are mediocre, and even below. But what they have found is if I claim to be a woman, then I can go and I can compete as a woman and I can make money. I can get sponsorship. Whatever it is, I can win championships. I mean, guys, the dude that went and swam, for Penn or whoever it was, and and I'm going blank on his name right now, but let me tell you this, he wasn't winning men events. He wasn't winning. He couldn't compete with the men. And so what did he do? He saw an opportunity. I mean, hey, let's grow our hair out a little bit. Let's claim to be a woman and let's go compete in women's sports. Where are the men? Where are the fathers? If you are listening to this episode and you are a dad, you better have your daughter's backs. I have a daughter. She wasn't the greatest athlete. She wasn't going to have a career in athletics. But you can be sure that if she was a good athlete and she was having to compete against men, I would be out there saying, this is not right. I mean, all of these women's right people that have been all about the women's right, equality for scholarships, they should be ticked off, right? They should be ticked off. Because now there are going to be men competing in women's sports that begin to take women's scholarships. Well, here's one of the problems. The feminism movement, those that wanted these equal rights for females compared to males, i.e. this, they wanted the same scholarships for college for women that men got. Well, there's a problem. Men have football, women don't. That's a lot of scholarships. 85 scholarships, that's a lot of scholarships. So you're not going to be equal in that. But when we look at the equality of that, Title IX, I believe is what it's called. When you have that, though, now you have to fill in these blanks. And it caused some schools to get rid of men's sports because they had to find a way to balance it out. But what's going to happen is as men competing as women begin to take scholarships, now you've got less scholarships for women. Women's rights, the feminism movement, should be all over that, protecting the rights of women. But the problem is they've claimed for so long that a woman is just as good as a man when it comes to sports, when it comes to competition, that to go against it would be admitting that there isn't equality when it comes to sports and competition. And so they have just allowed this to go. And it's time for dads to speak out. I mean, right? It's time for dads to speak out and say, this is wrong. I was on the ACLU website, and it was just talking about certain facts that are not true. And I want to read some of these facts that they say are not true. So one fact is that trans athletes do not have an unfair advantage in sports. So what the ACLU is saying, that is not true. That trans athletes do not have an unfair advantage in sports. Hello. Peter says the weaker vessel. Okay. Let's see what a woman, and listen, we'll take the top woman in the WNBA and we'll stick her in the NBA and let's see how that works. Now listen, guys, this is not to demean women. What it is to do is say men compete with men, women compete with women. You are not taking the top-rated female UFC fighter and putting her against the top male UFC fighter. Not to mention, I mean, you'll watch shows and even something like professional wrestling. I noticed this when I've watched it a couple times, flipping through the channels, that the woman can hit the man, but the men never hit the woman. Well, good. Neither of them should hit each other, really. But we don't want to communicate men hitting women. Why? Because men are the stronger vessel. That's not good for that to happen. It's not what God would ever desire for a man to do. But we treat them with honor and respect. And so the ACLU says that trans athletes don't have a fair advantage. And that's a fact. That is not a fact. Males competing in female sports have an advantage. And for somebody to say, well, in that high school track meet, well, the transgender male only got second place. Well, perhaps he would not even have made it to that level if he was competing against men, because he really wasn't that good. So that was a path for him to, and I mean, we're not even going to get into transitions from man to woman, woman to man, but it's gotten ridiculous. And so that one is that there is a strength difference for a man when it comes to that. I'm trying to get back here to another one of them. Oh, so one of their facts that they're trying to say is that including trans will benefit everyone. Including trans, so including men in female sports benefits women? Is that ludicrous or what? That the ACLU is trying to say that, you know what? Including trans athletes will benefit everyone. Everyone's going to be better off. Women will be better competitors because it'll raise the competition level. Come on, guys. Have you ever noticed how we manipulate these lies? I mean, okay, I'm not going to get into it right now, but what's going on in Israel and the protest in the United States and the ludicrousy of the things that they can say, if someone came out and said the things that people are saying about Israel, and let's just remove Israel and let's put Black Lives Matter in that. And let's say if they said that about Black Lives Matter, what about that? What if that was said? There would be an uprising. Now, listen, as a believer, I'm not shocked that people are turning all this animosity toward Israel. They're not turning it toward Israel. They're turning it toward God. This is a spiritual battle between principalities, right? And we don't even see everything that's going on because this is Satan on the attack of God. Just so you know, I know how this ends up, and Satan doesn't win. God is going to show himself in his power, and that's not going to happen. But yet, in a narrative, there's always a side that is the losing side, it looks like. And then there's always a side that can say what they want, do what they want, and there are no repercussions. So back to the transgender. At this same track meet, there was a group of people that were there, and they were protesting. And it was a very simple protest. Have you ever noticed how, like, when you look at the Israel protest versus the Palestinian protest, Israel is like their faces aren't covered. It's pretty peaceful. Palestinian protests, most of the people don't even know anything about the Palestinians. They're just there because they want to protest. But they got their faces covered up. They're violent. They're hateful. And there was a group at this track meet because they knew there were transgender athletes competing. And they had a sign that said, "Protect female sports." That's all it said. It just said protect female sports. Nothing wrong with it. They didn't name an individual, but listen, it was purposed. They were trying to say, we've got daughters out here, maybe not even competing, but we've got daughters. This shouldn't be. We need to stop this. And as it's going on, this woman, she walks by him and she is just cussing them out, belittling them, telling them what horrible people they are. What, for standing up for the rights of women? A woman is demeaning them? Guys, that blows my mind. I don't even get that. It doesn't make any sense. And so she is just yelling at them and cussing at them. And evidently she went and got security. Somebody got security. Security comes back. And security removes them. And let me tell you, this is peaceful. They're not shouting. It's right there. They just have a sign. Why is that hate? Because have you ever noticed that it gets labeled hate? If we stand up against the things that go on in our world, we are hateful. But people can be hateful and they are trying for peace. I mean, I still remember the Black Lives Matter riots, and they're burning down their own businesses. And I'm like, I don't even get that stuff. And I go back to Rodney King. Listen, that stuff was a mess that happened back then. That was just a tense moment. I mean, I still remember that. And I'm just like, those things should not have happened. But the response that came after it, they destroyed their own cities. And I'm like, that doesn't solve the problem. And the problem is that we throw hatred at things and then we don't solve the problem. We don't make things better. And so these protesters are basically just saying, protect female sports. And what they're saying then is what? Protect female scholarships in college, protect female opportunities for the Olympics. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that they just came out that no transgender athletes in the 2024 Olympics. Thank you, Jesus. It's not fair. That doesn't work. And so these protesters get thrown out, and they basically just go outside and they sit there and they had their signs outside of the event. They didn't stop supporting female sports. They just went out and did it peacefully outside where they couldn't be kicked out. Men, the reason why I talk about this today is that we need fathers. We need men standing up for their daughters, standing up for the weaker vessel. Okay? Standing up for the weaker vessel. Where are the dads of these female athletes? Because I'm sure some of them are strong and they're standing up. Others are probably scared to death about the backlash of what would happen. But trust me, if my daughter is fourth on the podium and a transgender athlete kept them from going to the next level and possibly kept them from scholarship opportunities later on, I'd be pretty upset. What happens is this, guys. When we stand against it, we get labeled the problem. We get labeled hateful, unforgiving, and the other side is always, oh, we're just inclusive. We love people. And yet you yell four-letter words at people, demeaning them while they state their case, while you try to go into college libraries to hurt people because they don't see things the way that you see things. I mean, man, there's a lot of things in this world that I don't agree with, but I don't go out looking for somebody to punch or yell out, cuss out, whatever. I don't do it. But if we talk, I'm going to tell you what I believe, but I'm also going to tell you it in respect. Respect that you may believe different, and that's okay. It's okay for you to be wrong if you believe in transgender athletes. It's okay for you to be wrong. Because I know God created man and woman. I'm 100% sure I'm right in this. That's not every situation. In this one, I am. And so when we look at this, guys, at what point is enough enough? At what point do we begin to take a stand? At what point do we take a stand so that men stop taking women's opportunities and we recognize that man is man? No matter what you label yourself, you are a man. Your makeup is different than a woman. You can have all the surgeries that you want. It will not change the fact that you are a man or you are a woman. That's just how it is. But guys, if you think it's going to get better, you're delirious. If you think that you can just sit by and it'll get it all worked out, you're wrong. You're off. And it's time that we begin to stand up. You know, we call this time to man up. In the world we live, men, it is time for men to man up. It is time for men to take a stand for women, for the rights of female athletes, to be able to compete on an even plane, to not have to go against men that couldn't make it against men, so they saw the option of let's compete against women. Remember, it's a one-way stream in this. That's what happens. I remember, I believe, maybe it was in France. I'm putting facts out that I really don't know exactly, so that maybe that's not good, but a guy competed in the like Miss USA type of thing that we have. And I thought, well, that serves him right? I mean, I thought it was weird. I'm like, I would never do that, but you don't see guys competing in women events. It just doesn't happen. But we have to make sure that we take a stand. And if you don't have a daughter, that doesn't excuse you from taking a stand. Stand for someone else's daughter. Stand for what is biblically correct. Because the longer it takes us to stand, the further and further we will get away from God's design plan for man and for women. Men, it's time. It's time to man up.